You will not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be brought to you by Xerox in 4 parts without commercial interruptions. The revolution will not show you pictures of Nixon blowing a bugle and leading a charge by John Mitchell, General Abrams, and Spyro Agnew to eat hog maws confiscated from a Harlem sanctuary. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution will not be sponsored by the Schaefer Award Theater and will not star Natalie Woods and Steve McQueen.
Revolution will not be televised. And as I told you, we about to jump this thing off. Poetry and activism. Some of the great poets in history come forward to bring forth and use their voice on social platforms to influence legislation, to influence social reform, to influence just the way that we as black people think, the way that other people think about black people. And they've made so many contributions. The way women hold themselves, right? The way that people that have some suffering and some downplay hold themselves. You know, and Gil Scott-Heron, he was 21 when he wrote this. 21 when he wrote this. And I think that is really fitting because he said the revolution will not be televised, but we got so much garbage, so much other stuff that's on right now, right? So much other stuff that's just taking our place and is taking over our minds in terms of what we're inundated with, right? And so when Gil Scott-Heron put this piece out, right, he was talking about the things around the media not covering as it relates to black folks, right? The topics that the media was not covering as it relates to black folks in particular. And that's why they say the revolution won't be televised, right? Because there's a thinking that what is happening in our community, so you won't hear about the unprecedented numbers of black folks that got out and went and voted, or the unprecedented numbers of black folks that went out and helped people to vote who hadn't voted. Thanks, Kenny. Right on. We see you, Kenny's TV. Thank you, brother. You don't hear about the stories like my man Miley Davis down in Atlanta. Miley, shout out if you're watching this. Give my shout out. Type Miley Davis, the Davis family in Atlanta, organizing the youth for the young brothers to go and protect not only the property and the community when we had the George Floyd situation that happened in the demonstrations, but then you had them go out and on this past Tuesday, making sure that the people could vote safely and they weren't intimidated or antagonized or discouraged to use their voice. See, the revolution won't be televised because there's power in people knowing what we're up to. However, they can't keep us down, y'all. They can't keep us down. And I'm going to tell you again, if you haven't made the switch to Twitch, switch on over to watch us on Twitch because I've got some really provocative stuff that we're going to be sharing, and Facebook and YouTube, quite frankly, just might not like it. So switch to Twitch, twitch.tv/Nia Center. Come on over there and check us out. Now, the Nia Center, once again, if you're familiar, if you haven't heard about the Nia Center, Nia means intent and purpose, right? We're a social enterprise. We're an ethical interfaith system, social justice center. We come together to bring together discussions around interfaith, around educating, engaging, and empower people, communities, organizations to live in their purpose. Because we know when people have intentions that are pure and they walk in their purpose, then there's some power that comes along with it and some passion that we get to experience. And who couldn't use a little bit of passion right now? So the revolution will not be televised. I thought that was really interesting because Gil Scott, as I said, was 21 when he wrote that. And some little bit of backdrop on that. The song was titled after the 1960s Black Power slogan, right? And written in response to The Last Poets. Anybody heard of The Last Poets? Y'all familiar with The Last Poets? Awesome, right? The Last Poets, we're going to bring you a little bit of Last Poets in a second, right? They wrote a piece that was called When the Revolution Comes, right? And When the Revolution Comes. And so he wrote that in response to that. But I want to just play just a few more seconds of this Gil Scott-Heron. If you don't mind, let me just jump forward on here to right around here because I think he ends it with some powerful phrases. Check out Jill.
Back after a message about a white tornado, white light. Have to worry about a dove in your bedroom, the tiger in your tank, or the giant in your toilet bowl. The revolution will not go better with Coke. The revolution will not fight germs that may cause bad breath. The revolution will put you in the driver's seat. The revolution will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised, will not be televised. The revolution will be no rerun, brothers. The revolution will be live.
Yeah, the revolution will be live. It'll be no rerun, brothers. It will be live. And so, Gil Scott, thank you so much for that. Thank you for your inspiration. And like I said, Gil Scott really did that in response to a piece that the Last Poets put out. Now, if you're familiar with the Last Poets, just put a 1 in the chat, man. If you know who the Last Poets are, I know the generations, it might be different generations checking this out, but the Last Poets, man, they actually came together on the birthday of Malcolm X, right? They came together and they formed this group and on the birthday of Malcolm X on May 19th, 1968, right? At what's now known as Marcus Garvey Park, but was formerly known as Mount Morris Park. And so it's on about 124th and 5th Avenue. So if you're from New York or you ever been in the New York Harlem area, you probably know this park very, very well, right? It's in East Harlem in New York City. And so there was 3 members originally, but they're the ones who really inspired this piece. But what I want to take us to, I want to play a little bit of it, but what I want to take us to is towards the end when they're really talking about some things that have me had a question around what is my commitment to activism. Again, we're saying, what is activism, right? And activism, if you're involved, you're going to make a difference. You're going to be an agent for change. And in doing that, what is the role that you play, or what is the role that you don't play? So let me find this. The Last Poets. Why are we missing? Okay, we got to go down a little bit. Gotcha. Okay, so here we go. So let me share a little bit of the Last Poets with you.
When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes, some of us will probably catch it on TV with chicken hanging from our mouths. You'll know it's revolution because there won't be no commercial. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. Preacher pimps are gonna split the scene with the communion wine stuck in their back pockets. Faggots won't be so funny then, and all the junkies will quit their nod and wake up when the revolution comes.
When the revolution comes.
Transit cops will be crushed by the trains after losing their guns, and blood will run through the streets of Harlem, drowning anything without substance. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. When the revolution comes. I hope pearly white teeth fall out of the mouths that speak of revolution without reference. The course of revolution is 360 degrees. Understand the cycle that never ends. Understand the beginning to be the end, and nothing is in between but space and time that I make or you make to relate or not to relate to the world outside my mind, your mind.
See, the Last Poets are a group of poets and musicians who rose in the 1960s out of African American civil rights, black nationalist threads, as history will tell it. And what they tell us is that their name is taken from a poem by the South African revolutionary poet, right? And his name is Carol Kiara Petsy. Probably messed that up a little bit, so y'all forgive me for that. What happened with that? They stopped us. Okay. So anyway, let's get back to it. What we do know is that the Last Poets had a big impact in the 1960s, right? They were featured in many scenes from movies. They were featured on talk shows. They were featured in a theme called Mr. Soul, which we'll talk about in a minute. And they were very, very active. Now, they originally was 3 members, right? The 3 members were Felipe Luciano, Gillen Kane, and David Nelson, right? And I think over the years they had some adjustments, some shifts in that. But however, what we do know is that their legend continues to live on, right? when you say Last Poets, it rings a certain thing in your spirit, right? It rings a certain thing in your spirit, whether you think of dashikis or whether you think of the rhythmic of the congas, where they actually infused not only African tradition, but where, as you know, in the slave trade, the Africans went around all of the Americas, right? The Latin Americas, right? And so the congas were used to send music and to send messages to people that were being affected by all over the triangle of the slave trade, and to send messages back to their folks. And so they incorporated all of these things, which was actually a multicultural approach to verse, right? And so when verse meets purpose, right, and in this case, the Last Poets, their purpose was to make you think. That's what he was talking about, eating chicken. And, when the revolution comes, ain't going to be no time for that. It ain't going to be no time for that kind of stuff. When the revolution comes, there won't be no time for that. It's only going to be time for getting it done. It's only going to be time for getting it done. And so what we
video, add me back to the stream. So we apologize for that. We had a malfunction. But yes, we know that today that revolution can look a lot of ways, right? Revolution, one word for revolution is making a turn, right? When people talk about celebrating birthdays, and I talk about they made this many revolutions around the sun. And so the question that is, when the time comes, where will you be? What would you be doing? What's your role? And so the poets and things that we're bringing forth today are talking about, they played their parts, they played their roles. Now it's time for us to do ours, right? Now it's time for us to do ours. So speaking of that, transitioning, if you stay with me, so we was in the 1960s, and in the same time in the 1960s, the 60s was bad. I was born in the 60s, so I'm a little biased. If you're born in the 60s, go ahead and get a shout out, 1960s. But there was a lot happening, right? There was a lot happening in terms of movements as it relates to Black folks, as it relates to activism, as it relates to making social change, to being involved despite the conditions and systems that seem to be set up differently, right? And there was a show on PBS at that time called Mr. Soul. And I get a shout out the movie Mr. Soul. The host of the show was Ellis Haslip. Ellis was a bad brother. So many of the names that you know today in Black music were first previewed on this show, Mr. Soul. And my niece, shout out to Ariel Davis. Ariel Davis was the editor on this movie, on this documentary that was done called Mr. Soul. And it was on PBS for a number of years until the powers that be started to pull funding from PBS and they canceled the show. But he brought forth acts like Earth, Wind, and Fire. He brought forth people to national proclaim and national attention like the Last Poets, like Sonia Sanchez. So there's so many more. And so let me what I like to do is just share with you a preview of Mr. Soul, right? Mr. Soul is a phenomenal movie. If you haven't seen it, I suggest check it out. I'm into just a clip from Mr. Soul.
Ellis Haslip, and welcome to Soul.
James Baldwin, Earth, Wind, and Fire.
Stevie Wonder, Giovanni, Alvin.
Oh, this is every day. Imagine what Soul would have been like for a 20-year run.
Los Angeles, Detroit, Newark, cities across the country were erupting.
There were so few positive African-American images on television.
We needed to reimagine ourselves on this American landscape.
Got any ideas, fellows?
Live and in color from New York City, Soul. I'm Ellis Hastler, producer of Soul, and we are happy to have you with us this evening.
Ellis was a gardener, and he cultivated all of these people.
Black voices speaking to the problems of our time.
Ellis said, if we're going to do something for the Black community, it's got to be a lot deeper, jazzier, even more controversial.
It's about time I hear something besides blondes have more fun.
Ellis already knew that Black culture led, didn't pull.
Baby.
Be still, peace, be still.
The hat was revolutionary.
The conversations he had between writers and poets.
Of course you can lie to me. Treat me the same way you would treat him.
I can't treat
You must. You grin at him all day long. You come home and I catch hell because I love you. I get least of you. Fake it with me.
I asked him, why are you having Rahsaan Roland Kirk on? He said, because he's crazy. That program was so beyond its time that it was in time.
Do you know who you are?
Soul was giving TV exposure to activist revolutionaries.
They want me to go to Vietnam to shoot some Black folks that never lynched me, never called me nigga.
You're so much more than...
Blacks all around the country say, yes.
Stay high, sucker chump.
You could do anything you wanted.
The FBI was very, very disturbed by that.
How do we get the Trinity?
I said, Ellis, this is a piece of history. Let's fight for it.
There exists, as far as I know, no TV program that deals with my culture so completely, so freely, and so beautifully.
There is nothing we cannot do.
Black seeds keep on growing.
There's nothing but evolution in my soul.
Yeah, that's Mr. Soul, y'all. Mr. Soul, man, it's a powerful show. And Ellis Haslip is a name that's not well known enough. Not well known enough. As you saw in the trailer, I mean, he brought forth some of these artists that we're highlighting today on the show were on that show. Sonia Gibbons was there. The Last Poets was there. I believe Nikki Giovanni was performed on that show. Alvin Ailey at its infancy performed on that show. So when I talk about like social activism, it can look a lot of ways, right? And in this particular case, it was using the arts, using your talents and bringing them forth to show the world who we are and the talent and the beauty and the creativity that we are. As you had a chance to see, even in the trailer, the diversity of art forms that were debuted. I mean, we some bad people, y'all. Bad meaning good, not bad meaning bad, LL. Yes, shout out to LL. Bad meaning good, not bad meaning bad. And so we talk about social activism and the role that artists have played or the role that artists get to play. And let's just say in using your verse. And so verse is another way of talking about using your voice, using the gifts and the talents that you have to make a difference, to influence somebody, to inspire somebody, to let somebody know that they can too overcome, right? They too can overcome. You know, you think about poets like Langston Hughes, right? And Hughes was born at, as they call him, James Mercer Langston Hughes. He had 4 names, born back in 1901, right? But at the end of the period of when Blacks was doing really well, what they call the Reconstruction period, right? And but he came up hard, right? He came up hard, and he's known as a social activist and a novelist and a playwright, and he's from Joplin, Missouri, right? But he's one of the earliest innovators in the new literary art form called jazz poetry, right? And so he's best known as the leader of the Harlem Renaissance. Now, there's a lady that spent some time in Harlem that I think can speak very well of this man, that she had some time to share some space and place with them. And why don't we go ahead and let's bring her to the stage, Sonia Sanchez.
Legs no longer strong, but arms strong like Elizabeth Catlett's Black women's arms. And he said, Sonia Sanchez, como Langston Hughes. And I smiled, a smile of recognition, folded myself into his arms, and he hugged me so hard that I couldn't breathe. And I thought, hold it, I didn't come all this way to die in Cuba. And then I realized that if I just stopped struggling, if I just leaned into his breath, I would be all right. And I leaned into his breath, and we began to breathe as one. That is what the great poet Langston Hughes poetry taught us all, the necessity to learn how to lean into each other's breath and breathe as one.
Yes, Sonia, thank you. How to lean. Breathe as one. Yeah, yeah. And so that's the power of art. That's the power of using your voice, is that, you know, this TED Talk was in not just a few years ago, right? And so you're talking about something that this man did in the mid 1900s, that 70 years later is having an impact. So you never can underestimate the impact that you're going to have, but you need to know that it's important. You need to know that we need you to be active in whatever way you can, right? And so, you know, and Langston has written so many pieces of art, right? So many pieces of art. So I won't even go to say his most famous, right? But one of the pieces that Langston wrote that a lot of folks have recognized, and I'll just share a piece of it in honor of Langston Hughes. I'll share it in honor of Langston Hughes. And it's called The Negro Speaks of Rivers. The Negro Speaks of Rivers. An ode to Langston Hughes. I've known rivers. I've known rivers ancient as the world and older than the flow of human blood in human veins. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. See, I bathed in the Euphrates when dawns were young. I built my hut near the Congo, and it lulled me to sleep. I looked upon the Nile and raised the pyramids above it. I heard the singing of Mississippi when Abe Lincoln went down to New Orleans, and I've seen its muddy bosom turn all golden in the sunset. I've known rivers, ancient, dusky rivers. My soul has grown deep like the rivers. That's that piece, y'all. Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes. I've known rivers. Hello, FG Studstill. Greetings, greetings. Yes, poetry and activism. Poetry, like we said, Langston is well known for the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance is one of the things he's well known for, but not limited to. Not limited to. And so many artists that we could have previewed and highlighted. And I just wanted to pull out a few that have spoken and touched my soul in ways that I thought was pretty powerful. And so, you know, I've had the opportunity actually to share some time and space with Sonia Sanchez, right? And it was at the preview of the movie that I talked to you about a minute ago called Mr. Soul, and where she was being honored and recognized for her contributions to society and the role that she played in bringing forth this social activism. Now, Sonia has a phenomenal story. And if you saw her just walking down the street, very unassuming and very powerful, right? And she shared maybe about 30 minutes with me, and I was really honored. And just talking to me, I felt like I was in the presence of my grandmother. I felt like I was getting a big hug, even though we were sitting and talking. I think she may have put her hand on me, and you could just feel the warmth and energy and power flowing through her. And Sonia didn't come from no easy times, right? She didn't come from no easy times. She lost her mother when she was 6 years old. Then her grandmother took her, her grandmother passed away. Then they moved her up to Harlem and lived with her dad, and dad had remarried a couple of times, and his stepmother. And, you know, so Sonia didn't have a easy life. As a matter of fact, she wasn't even named Sonia. But I think that if you've ever heard Sonia speak, that you'll say one thing about her. I think you'll say that she's pretty powerful. Let me just play this excerpt just for a few minutes for Sonia.
And our eyes are anointed with indigo. We sing amen, amen, amen. A woman, a woman, a woman. This is a poem about you. You fun-loving men and women, you flint and feather men and women, you country and cathedral men and women with hearts in your mouths, singing the morning wind and becoming the wind, tearing the wings off ignorance and greed and war and guns and assassinations and miseducation, no education, poverty, arrogance, war, 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 folding yourselves in the music of a Spanish guitar, forever strumming racial, sexual, social, economic, religious, justice and peace. Peace, 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 peace. This is a poem, you'll say I know. This is a poem, you'll all say I know it, about that great genius W.E.B. Du Bois, who said, what shall the end be? The world, old and fearful things, war and wealth, murder and luxury, or shall it be a new thing, a new peace and a new democracy of all races, a just humanity of equal men and women? This is a poem about a new time.
What shall the world be? Shall it be a place of peace, a place of democracy, a place of justice? Yes, I love Sister Sanchez. Man, and the way that she moves, I mean, the cadence that she shares it with, the fire that's in her belly. What will the world be? What will the world be? Now, many may not know who Sister Sanchez is, Sonia Sanchez. I'd say, if you look her up, she is not only a poet and activist and a scholar, she's the Lower Cornell Professor of English and Women's Studies at Temple University. So she's out in Philly, probably right now active in all the happenings in Philly right now. She is the recipient of the Robert Frost Medal for Distinguished Lifetime Service to American Poetry and the Langston Hughes Poetry Award. She's a bad mother. Yes, yes, fire, absolutely. Sonia Sanchez. Her politics changed over time. See, a lot of people don't know that. So Sonia, after the influence of Malcolm X, right? And she became more from less of an integrationist and more into the separatist movement, right? She even joined the Nation of Islam for a few years, right? And she's an advocate for African Americans. Right? She's been a champion of Black studies. She actually created the department at San Francisco State University. Sonia's legacy moves on. African American artists and activism. Artists and activism. Poetry and activism. Using her verse and her purpose. Using her purpose to influence her verse. Writing about her purpose in her verse. Sharing her verse and her purpose to inspire the lives of others. You know, she wrote a poem. It's called Personal Letter Number 3. I'll just share it with you. I'll share it with you because I think it's just really interesting. She says, nothing will keep. Now, just, you know, get in my Sonia Sanchez mode. Nothing will keep us young, you know. Not young men or women who spend their youth on cool playing sounds. What are we? We are what we never think we are. No more wild geographies of the flesh, echoes that we move in tune to slower smells. It is a hard thing to admit that sometimes after midnight, I am tired of it all. That's called Personal Letter Number 3. Now, Sonia's legacy, like I said, continues to live on. And there's a show that's on HBO called Love Country. If you've seen Love Country, just put a 1 in the chat or type Love Country in. If you watch some of it, even if you're not a fan of it, but you know what it is, type Love Country LC in the chat. Come on, run a LC, run a heart C, something representing Love Country in the chat. Done. It's a phenomenal show in the sense that it brings together the creativity of art. And, you know, Jordan Peele partnered with Martin, J.J. Abrams, I'm sorry, and they put together a show that will take you on a ride. It'll take you on a ride because you see it's like Twilight Zone and Murder, She Wrote and Agatha Christie and some kind of fun comedy, all mixed in together. Yes, FG says Love Country is the bomb. So if you haven't seen it, it's a show, and you gotta stay for the full episode, right? Because it may have some moments and you're like, what is this? But I promise you, if you watch the full episode, they'll bring it home, right? And so that was actually based on some historical truths about the man who they were writing about in this story, right? And he was known as a huge racist and had a big impact. Yes, he says the bomb kapow. Absolutely, Nia Center, the bomb kapow. And so the people were looking to take the possessions, the prized possessions, the soul of Black folks, and then credit it to non-Black folks. And so the show is about how that transpired. And I'm not giving it away because I'm talking about it really esoteric. If you've watched it, you know that I'm not giving the plot away. But there's a thing when the Black folks go to reclaim, right? And this is activism. And I just want to play this because Maya Sanchez dropped it. I mean, dropped it in this poem that they put in the show. So let me share that scene. If you haven't seen it, I was not giving anything away. And it just really speaks to the artistry and what we're speaking about tonight in terms of artistry and activism and how they get to come together.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
Sometimes I wonder what to say to you now in the soft afternoon air as you hold us all in a single death. I say, where is your fire? I say, where is your fire? You got to find it and pass it on. You got to find it and pass it on from you to me, from me to her, from her to him, from the son to the father, from the brother to the sister, from the daughter to the mother, from the mother to the child. I say, where is your fire? I say, where is your fire? Can't you smell it coming out of our past? The fire of living, not dying. The fire of loving, not killing. The fire of blackness, not gangster shadows. Where is our beautiful fire that gave light to the world? The fire of pyramids, the fire that burns through the hulls of slave ships and made us breathe. The fire that made guts into chitlins. The fire that took rhythms and made jazz. The fire of sit-ins and marches that made us jump boundaries and barriers. The fire that took street talk and sounds and made righteous Imhotep raps. Where is your fire? The torch of life, full of Nzinga and Nat Turner and Garvey and Du Bois and Fannie Lou Hamer and Martin and Malcolm and Mandela. Sister, brother, come, catch your fire, don't kill, hold your fire, don't kill, learn your fire, don't kill, be the fire, don't kill, catch the fire, and burn with eyes that see our souls walking, singing, yeah, building, laughing, learning, yes, loving, yes, teaching, being, hey, young brother, hey, young sister, here is my hand, catch the fire and live, 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 live,
Live, live, live, live. Where is your fire? Where is your fire? Where is your activism? Where are you being active in your community? Where are you being active in your family? Where are you being active in your church? Where are you being active in your life? Where are you being active in your neighborhood? Where are you being active? What voice are you bringing to it? Where is your fire? Live, 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 live. Sonia Sanchez, y'all. Give it up for Sonia Sanchez. She's a bad, bad mama jamma. She is a bad, bad mama jamma. Yes, don't forget the Watts Prophets too. Yes, yes, absolutely. I mean, I won't give away that movie, but that scene is speaking to a time when it was going well for us, and they looked to try to take it away, right? And so in the midst of trying to take it away, what are you willing to do to preserve it? What are you willing to do to stand up for it? What are you willing to do to hold on to it? And she says, live, and where is your fire? Fire, fire, fire. And she reminds me of another brother who's bad. And, you know, and he told some people, he said, I am not your Negro. And as he puff on a cigarette, you may know who I'm talking about. He's very well spoken, and he has a particular type of way that he talks. He spent a lot of time in the United States, but he also went over to Europe and lived there freely for some time. And he's known as a novelist, an essayist, and a playwright and a poet. And he was a major voice in the civil rights movement. He was a major voice in the civil rights movement. And you know what? Let me just have the Queen introduce him. How about that? If you haven't figured out who I'm talking about, let me have the Queen introduce him. And because nobody can say it quite like she can. And this is her reading an excerpt from one of his pieces.
If we, and now I mean the relatively conscious whites and the relatively conscious blacks, if we do not falter in our duty now, we may be able, handful that we are, to end the racial nightmare and change the history of the world.
Yes, she said we might be able to change the history of the world. As a matter of fact, she was reading the words of James Baldwin. James Baldwin. I mean, if you haven't seen I'm Not Your Negro, check it out. I'm gonna put that there. I'm Not Your Negro. Check it out. James Baldwin is one of the very provocative writer. I think for me, you know, I think you have to deal with it for yourself. Let me just share a verse from James Baldwin. It's called Amen. No, I don't feel death coming. I feel death going. Having thrown up his hands for the moment, I feel like I know him better than I did. Those arms held me for a while, and when we meet again, there will be that secret knowledge between us. Amen. That's that piece, y'all. James Baldwin. James, give it up for James Baldwin. Yes, I'm not your Negro. James Baldwin, in his own words. You gotta check it out. Now, James, you know, he said a lot of things. And one of the things that he said, I want to share with you, right? And so if you just give me another minute just to get to this piece in this video, where James is speaking this truth right about here. Let's check this out. Let's pick back up with James.
People. What you going to school for then, dummy? We don't even have a country. I know that. Do we have a country? He said, that's your country, which is not your country. You have no flag, brother.
A boy last week, he was 16, told me on television. Thank God we got him to talk. Maybe somebody will start to listen. He said, I got no country, I've got no flag. Now, he's only 16 years old. And I couldn't say you do. I don't have any evidence to prove that he does. And at the moment you are born, since you don't know any better, every stick and stone and every face is white. And since you have not yet seen a mirror, you suppose that you are too. It comes as a great shock around the age of 5 or 6 or 7 to discover the flag to which you have pledged allegiance, along with everybody else, has not pledged allegiance to you. It comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you.
It's up to you. As long as you think you're white, there's no hope for you. As long as you think you're white, I'm going to be forced to think I'm black.
Yeah. Yes, deep in my heart. Deep in my heart. James Baldwin. Yeah. He say, as long as you think you're white, I'm going to be forced to think I'm black. And what does that even mean? And that's what James Baldwin is known for, was to say things in a very provocative manner right in your face, to have you saying, well, what is he talking about? And then who am I to be hearing what I'm hearing? And why do I hear it that way? Is he calling me forth? Is he calling me out? Artistry and activism. And James knew that even though he had been ostracized because of his stanzas and his lifestyles and some of the choices that he made that it didn't seem mainstream, they still could not deny him. They could not deny his intelligence. They could not deny his boldness. They could not deny his truth. And he was not our Negro. His authentic self. And his call forward was to be your authentic self. Be willing to question what you're standing for. What you're talking about, the flag you're raising, what team you're on and why. Be willing to stand and question and stand powerfully and question, and also shift if you need to shift. Say the things that get to be said because people need to hear it. James Baldwin. That's on the PBS, y'all. It's American Masters series on PBS, and it is fantastic. It is fantastic. Now, no time is flying. Let me give you just another quick shout out. The NIA Center, right? And NIA, again, means intent and purpose. And so if you haven't made the switch over to TV, twitch.tv/NIA Center, please do. But so if you're there, follow us. If you're watching this on YouTube, follow us. If you're watching this on Facebook, follow us. We want your support. We need your support. We want to have this messaging get out to as many people as possible. We know there's an audience for it, right? And we know you may be watching in the replay because something else had your attention and time at 8 o'clock. But the good thing about technology is you can watch it whenever you want to. So watch the replay. I promise you, you won't be disappointed with the artists. Sonia Sanchez, Langston Hughes, Maya, I almost gave her away. We ain't even brought her on yet. Speaking of, there's nothing quite like this lady here. She is so regal, right? And so calm and powerful at the same time. She's refreshing like a drink of cold water in the midst of a very hot day, right? She's also a quick whisper air if you walked out and just give you that quick shot to say, oh, wake up. You better wake up. You better realize, and she's responsible for one of my favorite quotes. She says, when people tell you who they are the first time, you better believe them. When they tell you who they are the first time, you better believe them. Because I was like, no, Maya, not me. Not such and such. Such and such would never do that to me. And Sister Maya says, when people tell you who they are the first time, you better believe them. And if you ain't had the life for this to come true, keep on living. Keep on living. But as I say that, I want to share with you because Maya is, we know that she's well celebrated, but let me play this piece for you on Maya Angelou because she deserves it, right? I'm going to play this whole trailer, and at the end, she's going to give us a live piece. Why don't we go ahead and get into it?
Everybody in the world uses words. The writer has to take these most known things and put them together in such a way that a reader says, I never thought of it that way before. My mother's boyfriend raped me. I was 7, so I stopped speaking for 5 years. In those 5 years, I read every book in the Black school library. When I decided to speak, I had a lot to say.
Maya was a dancer. She sang, she was an actress.
She was a beautiful Giacometti sculpture.
Of course, she was a writer.
When I reached for the pen to write, I have to scrape it across those scars.
Maya was responsible for teaching me why I should know more about my roots, but I remember her being very angry. Very angry.
My mother taught me a love of justice, a love of doing what's right.
I know why the cage bird sings. It was a very important literary feat.
Cage Bird was really almost another Bible for me.
It was the opening for me to wanting to be a writer.
It was the first time I read something that resonated. It touched a very young, girlish part of me.
It reflected my own mother's life.
When I read it, I couldn't believe that she was free enough to talk about them.
I read those words and thought, somebody knows who I am.
She was big, and she had the voice of God.
Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling. I bear in the tide, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the hope and the dream of the slave, and so I rise. I rise.
Yes, she rises. Maya Angelou, y'all. Give it up for Maya Angelou. Woo! Maya Angelou, I rise. And Maya has just been such a profound piece of my life and history, and having the opportunity to hear her and when she read that really powerful poem at the Obama inauguration many years ago, it seems like now, right? And Maya has always just continued to call my spirit forth, to call me forth. And she talks about, in the person of I, she knows why the cage bird sings. She rises, right? And in hearing her talking about the I get the hope for the me. Because her talking about the I gives me permission to think that the me can do it. So when you're with people and you have an opportunity to share your story about your things that happened to you that should have never happened to you and how you overcame them, or why you can sing even though you're in a cage, That when you share it authentically, it's something about that opens that door on the cage for the other person, that gives them permission to say, well, I can do it too. I can do it too. And that's what this Allverse Thursdays is all about. It's bringing you verses and purpose, artists sharing their verse and their journey with their purpose to inspire, to touch. If it's only one life, if only one ear hears one thing that makes a difference, then we've done it. We've done what we're supposed to do. The Nia Center is all about intention and purpose. It's all about putting yourself in a position and a place to live your purpose, getting the support that you need to do it, having the tools and resources that you need to do it. And we all have a role. We all play a very particular role in that. And so thank you. Thank you for watching today. Thank you. And if you've never watched before, thank you for watching for the first time. If you watched it more than once, thank you for watching it more than once. Tell a friend. Tell a friend about the Nia Center on twitch.tv. Tell them to follow us. Tell them to subscribe to us. Tell them to send us some money to the Cash App or to the Zelle. Tell them to follow us on the YouTube or on the Facebook. Because we rise when we support each other. And our intention is to educate, engage, and empower. Be moved with intention and purpose. And that's what we do. And so as we get ready to bring this session to a close, and this has been just awesome. Thank you, Naonu, for sharing the inspiration with me. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to dig inside, to really understand the activism with the artistry. And we already know that verse here is a very sacred space. Over time, there was only a few people in the tribe that had the ability to share the verse, and they would share it back, and they held it in such a way that it was honored and it was sacred. Yes, thank you for your support. We love you. We appreciate you. And in this closing moments, we're going to send blessings of oneness, love, and joy. Hashtag oneness, love, joy. Hashtag oneness, love, joy. And there's somebody in your life right now that you want to send a blessing to. And we're not talking about buy a prayer cloth and we're going to send it to you. We're not talking about that kind. We're talking about a divine blessing, because we know that the truth of the matter is, in this moment, I am a divine being having a human experience called Mark Christmas, sharing on this multicast platform right now. But we're going to come together in our divine beings beyond this human experience that we're having and send the blessings of oneness, love, and joy. Somebody needs it. Put their name in the chat. If you don't want to put their name in the chat, bring them to your mind, to the front of your mind. I'll give you a moment just to blessings of oneness, love, and joy. Who needs it? If it's you, just put me. Who wants it? If it's you, just put me. If it's somebody else, put their name, put their initials. Let them know that you're thinking about it. You never know. Thinking of prayer counts as prayer too. Sometimes just knowing that you're thought of can make the difference. And as we get ready to close out, and I acknowledge that we may get kicked off of Facebook with this last one, but I would be remiss if I didn't honor our man, James Weldon Johnson. James Weldon Johnson. Yes, oneness, love, joy, Felicia. Thank you. Absolutely. James Weldon Johnson wrote one of the greatest songs that I've ever sang, right? And if you were born or went to school in the 70s or the 80s, you probably sang it too, particularly if you lived in an urban neighborhood. You probably sang this song too. But thanks to our friend, Pastor Kirk Franklin, right, we got a remix. And so we're going to end with these blessings of oneness, joy. And I'm going to play the Kirk Franklin remix. And if they take us off of Facebook and YouTube, I understand, because we brought to you with the intention of inspiring. Been in the board meeting, so you can catch the replay. We thank you. We're glad to see you jumped in on us, right? And this last one, you know, you want to put your hand over your heart whatever it is that means to you. But as you think about the blessings of oneness, love, and joy, as we get ready to share this one, and I'm going to let it ride. And when it rides, we're going to go out. It's going to be the end of the show. So before I say that, I just want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, and thank you. Your love and your support. Support us on the Nia Center. We had tonight Sonja Sanchez, Maya Angelou. Who else we have? We had James Baldwin. Right, we had some awesome poets on here today. And you can always see it again if you missed it. So, yes, thank you once again from this head. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let me go ahead and share this. As we appreciate you and we send our love, oneness, love, and joy. Have a great day. Be safe. Be loved. Be good. Be you.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of
Put it in the chat, y'all. You want to send some love and joy to somebody? Put their name in the chat. Let our rejoicing.
Let it resound. Let it resound. As the rolling sea.
I like this part.
I like it too, Kurt.
Come on.
Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us.
Yes, living for our country. Thank you, MT Sunskill, for the donation. Allverse Thursdays, y'all. Yes.
Let us march on.
Yes.
To
victory. In Philadelphia, in Arizona, in Georgia, in Michigan, in Chicago, in your house, in my house. Yeah.
All my brothers out there.
Hold your head up. Hold your head up.
Until that day. Let us march on to victory.
We love you. We love y'all. We got about 20 more seconds, y'all. Oneness, love, joy, peace.